Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Planning and Development Board. Tonight we have a full attendance with no apologies, no substitutions. And I'm just wondering if that's because this is the slightest agenda in living memory. Now, I have assured everybody that members will be circumspect, so we'll be out of here in 10 minutes because the heating's about to turn itself on. So, evacuation procedure, I think everybody that's here knows it, so we don't need to go through that. Apologies, we have none. Oh yes, Councillor Area.
They are here.
Oh,
just went to the toilet. I think they're just looking at the
presentation
at the ugly building.
The ugly building. Do you want to go and get them?
I mean, if we get to a point where we're going to have something, I'll give them. But I mean, looking at the ugliest building that we've ever proposed to build is important. Any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Minutes of the meeting of the board held on the 5th of January. Are you happy I sign them as a true and accurate record?
Could I just check that I don't declare any interest in these applications for the trees at the leisure centre?
Yeah, I have personally.
I don't have a personal interest except that I can see them from my window.
He's got a log burner, hasn't
Once they're out, I might have an interest.
Very fond of one of them.
Seriously, no, I don't.
Members, with your consent, I'd now like to bring agenda item 7 forward. Because we have an officer who is anxious to go home, as indeed all of us. There's no point in him sitting for our deliberation on trees. So, Mr. Sutton, would you like to explain your report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And moving on. So the report is set out in front of you with a number of recommendations for the budget, which will feed into the exec board budget later in the month. I think the key point to point out after table 1, which is at 3.1, is that there's been a significant change in the way that the budgets are set, which includes the removal of central support costs, and central support costs are those such as finance, IT, customer service, the building, etc., which used to be included in the service budgets. We do have to report total cost, but we don't need to budget for those within the service costs. So to make it simpler, budgets are now set so that finance and not finance spread across all of the service costs. That though does cause a discrepancy between the original budget for 25-26 and the revised budget for 25-26, which is where the change is made. There is a correlation between the revised 25-26 and the original budget for 26-27. And you can see that the numbers change significantly between the original and the revised for 25-26. As just discussed with the chair, it is a two-way street in all of the boards, in that there are income budgets, so money going from planning board into other boards, which is why the income is down. What the income now shows for revised and original is the actual income of the board, and not revenue costs that are then being transferred between other boards. So that is now a pure income figure, and that is an increase in income of 32,000 for between 5-6 and 6-7. So the main variances, or all the variances within 5-6 to 6-7 are related to inflation, and then inflation figures will then be built into the medium term financial strategy for the board, there is only one capital programme item for this board, which is the replacement planning system, which is within the revised budget for 25-26. And again, the fees and charges have also been increased by income, increased by inflation, and the income related to that built into the budget will be most of that 32,000 will be inflation related increases. I'll take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thanks for the explanation. Because I was going to ask that about, I understood where the costs have gone. I can get that because we're going to keep the costs centrally. I couldn't quite fathom where the revenue have done such a step down. So where is that? What was that other 700k of revenue that was originally in the planning budget that is now not?
We'd have to look at the detail of it, and as I say, that's why it's not. So the starting position is that the overall costs when it comes through exec board are the same. So, and those costs are being transferred around. I'm not quite sure what planning board costs move to other areas, but it's
More the revenue, sorry, Paul. The revenue, the costs I get we're
Yeah.
moving the cost centrally.
you mean the income.
Sorry, income, sorry.
Yeah, that is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so 1.6
Yeah.
million.
So there will have been planning board costs that will have been recharged to other boards, and that is the income
Right.
that is in that line.
Seems a lot of money when you consider it's nearly 2 points. So
I mean, the spreadsheet that used to be put together to do the central support, it is like that and so complicated. And basically what I said was, I'm not doing that anymore. We stop. We set the budgets as they are. So the employee costs of people who work for services that are within the planning board are within the planning board, and they then don't get moved anywhere else.
Okay.
So it's a, you know, I like to do things as straightforwardly and as simply as possible, and then be able to explain it. I can explain everything that's in 25-26 revised and 26-27 originally. I'll explain some of the things that happened. And as I gave an example, if it's okay with you. So within the licensing board, which, you know, should be pretty straightforward, the employee costs of the licensing team were in 25-26 originally in C&E board. So I can't explain that. Well, I can tell you that that's the case, but I can't explain why.
it's just with this rejiggle, if I could, effectively as a planning team, you're 300k down. So what you actually, because it went from 1.6 income versus a 1.1 net cost, which giving you 500k, and then all of a sudden we're now down at basically the costs are the income, but there's no surplus there.
So Andrew, most of these budgets fall, will not have a budget. Well, we're not have costs that he doesn't have a budget for. So those things that have been moved, the costs will go with those budgets. So the budgets are all manageable within what's in the revised and in the original 26-27. There will have been things within the original 25-6 that Andrew wouldn't have had control of. That doesn't have control of my spend, and yet he will have had a chunk of my spend in his budget.
Yeah, I get from an over central cost being dispersed amongst the organisation. It's just it seems to have gone from, if you're looking at it as a team that were making decent amount of surplus for the work they were doing, and now they're going to a team where they're not making any surplus, of 10k worth of surplus.
No,
Oh, actually 10k's worth of
because-
loss. Actually, because there's 900, no, 10k's surplus.
But when you apply the central cost, that is 1.2 million net cost. So
That's not telling me 919. As net cost of service 919.
but it was 1.2.
Yes, yeah, but I was also getting 1.6 of revenue. Now I'm only getting 929 of revenue.
I think that's where our difficulty in understanding it was, because if you like, it was a net cost of 1.19,
Yeah.
including 1.4 central support. I understand some was in, some was out, some
Yeah.
taken about, but we've gone from a net cost of 1.1 to essentially 920,000, 910 last year. So I think, I mean, we don't need to do it tonight, even though we've got a short agenda, but I think some sort of training for us to understand where we
Yeah,
are
but
would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
fair comment.
Councillor Hayfield, then Councillor Watford.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm still trying to get my head around it. I seem to recall central support costs years ago were a wonderful way of hiding all sorts of things by just spreading it across the entire organisation. Can I cut to the chase on this and say, having looked through the finances for planning previous years and now, is there any area that currently gives you cause for concern?
That's a good question.
I hoped it was.
I suppose if within, so from a budget perspective, no, because most of the budgets relate to things that we know about, and particularly within service like planning, because most of it's staff. So within other areas, the staffing costs will make up, and in fact, across the organisation, you're probably looking about 60-65%. In planning, you're probably looking at about 80-85%, because there are premises costs, supplies and service costs, they're much smaller. So income from planning, if I didn't say that income from planning was a concern, you'd look at me and go, you're mad. Because they're so volatile. So we just don't know what income we're going to get year on year, which is why we need to monitor it more closely than we have been and are doing, now that we've got the information within the system to be able to do that. So income from planning is always a concern because it's volatility. Some years you can get 2 major planning applications and your budget's made, and next year you don't get any, and you're struggling to get the smaller applications to make up that. So the planning income, I think, is always one. Section 106s as well would be the other area to make sure that we've got those aligned to what we're going to use them for, so that we don't end up paying back. We've got a sort of regime in place. We've got a spreadsheet with them all on. What we need to make sure is that they're all plugged into schemes going forward, and then we can, because we've got fairly significant amount of schemes coming through and 106s that we'll get, and so just getting really organised on those and knowing and understanding where they are. I think they're probably the 2 things that we need to keep on top of. We'll always need to keep on top of planning people. We'll always need to keep on top of 106s. They're probably the 2 biggest things.
Thank you.
Councillor Watford.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the earmark reserves, the 25,000 the year 25-26, and then 0-0. Just a little bit of further detail on why we won't be seeing any earmark reserves in there. You may have already covered it, but it's gone over my head. As the others have said, it's a little bit confusing, and I would welcome a training session, but thank you for your hard work. But if you could just explain that, and there is a reason why I'm asking that.
Okay, so in terms of the earmark reserves, you would normally bring earmark reserves in to fund something, and it's unclear what that 25,000 was funding. Generally speaking, it's for funding capital schemes and capital projects. Now there is a capital scheme of 53,000 that is in the capital programme for planning, and it may well have been for that, though the figure doesn't correlate. So it's 25, the total cost is 53. What we've said within the report is that the funding for the capital programme will be included within the exec board report, and the reason for that is that previously the capital programme hasn't been funded at budget. So it's been unclear what funding is going to be used to fund the capital programme. The funding then is then applied at year end to do the accounts, otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it. But clearly, knowing what resources you've got, reserves, capital receipts, grants, etc., that needs to be known and understood. But because we're still working through that, we're going to do that exec board. So it may well be that 53,000 retrospectively will drop into the revised for 25-26 because that's how we're going to fund the capital programme. At the minute, because it's not funded, that's why we're taking it out.
What about any sort of inspection, inspectorate, appeals or anything
Oh, I
like
see.
that?
Yeah,
That's where I'm kind of,
okay.
have you got anything in the budget in case we end up fighting things?
no, but we do have money in reserve for those, and I'm struggling to remember what the numbers off the top of my head. But there are reserves for that for that provision.
So it doesn't have to go in planning?
So what we would normally do, and I don't know if it's, I'm looking to Andrew to know if there's any kind of history of appeals and costs. Ordinarily, when we know what is happening, we would bring a report, and the report would say we expect the cost of the appeal to be, let's say, 25,000, and we would bring the earmark reserve in at that point. So we would put a income budget essentially against the earmark reserve. That's bringing it from the reserve, and then an expenditure budget for the cost of the appeal. So the two match off.
I'm glad you asked that, Councillor Waffles, because that was on my list. So I'm now one
Yeah,
question down on what I
Sorry,
was going to
it's
talk about.
probably me, but I'm still a bit confused because in my head, I thought earmark reserves were just there. You didn't have to sort of then go somewhere else to get them in. They're there because we're waiting in case of that, but I might have got that completely wrong.
So this is the revenue budget. So this is about using those resources. So the employees' budget is an expenditure budget. That's
Yeah.
why it doesn't have brackets around it. The earmark reserves budget there is an income budget. So that is bringing money from the earmark reserve into the revenue account.
Okay.
So in the earmark reserve spreadsheet, we would then see, let's again for ease of numbers, if the reserve for planning appeals, and if this was a planning appeal, was 25,000, then the reserve would go from 25,000 to 0 because it's been moved into the reserve, into the revenue account to fund the 25,000 that's in expenditure for the appeal.
So it's 25,000 the amount we could potentially draw on, or is that an arbitrary figure?
That's an arbitrary figure.
You looked at what does it cost us $250,000 ago?
It wouldn't be 25,000.
I know.
That's for sure.
If only they cost 25,000.
Yeah, that's right.
Councillor Parsons?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So if I'm easily confused in these matters, so, so in terms of earmarked reserves, as it were, have I got it right that we're looking at a global, as it were, pot of earmarked reserves, not attached to the various boards, but then the boards will draw on that as necessary? Is that basically what's going on?
So there are two two types of reserve. So there's the general fund balance, which is what I call the reserve of last resort, and we as an authority or through me as section 151, I will require require a general fund balance to be set usually between 10 and 20% of net budget requirement, which is about 2.2 million. Well, 20% is about 2.2 million. I'm just going through that process, and that will come through the exec board report. Earmarked reserves have to be earmarked for a specific purpose. So there is a long list of earmarked reserves, all with numbers against them, mostly related to schemes that have either finished or were due to be done years ago and not done. So I'm doing a piece of work at the minute to review those and reallocate them to things that are needed going forward. So, clearly they should be about things that are going to happen rather than things that have happened. So as an example, we need to fund the capital programme. We don't have many other resources. So You know, we get grants for things like facilities grants. We get some grants, and UK SPF as an example. We got grant for funding for some of that, but most of it is funded locally. We don't have a huge amount of capital receipts other than on the HRA side, so they tend to get funded by earmark reserves. So clearly we need a capital earmark reserve to fund the programme. But there are others, and there will need to be others. Local reorganisation, for example, we will need a reserve because we'll need to fund that process. But they all have to be specific for a purpose and only used for that purpose.
Thanks again, Chair. Sorry, just to come back on that again. Earmark reserves seem to be my life with the parish, you see, so that's why I'm interested in asking these questions. My understanding is that if we have a pot then where all of the reserves are together, is that what you're saying? Essentially.
Yes, so they all come under the banner of earmark reserves,
Right.
but there will be, there's an insurance reserve, there's a risk reserve, there's
Okay.
a capital reserve, there's a, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, lots of reserves, all under the banner of earmark reserves.
The reason I'm asking is that if you apply for grants and they want to see what's in your pot for that particular scheme or project, if it's all in one, we may be, you know, putting our noses out of joint because they might look at it as a whole and think we've got more money for that project than we actually have. So if it's in little sub pots, usually it's easier to, you know, explain that that's for that project, that's for that, so they can't look at the whole lot and think, oh, you're fine, you don't need any money. Do you know what? I mean, that's really simple. I'm not an accountant.
Yeah,
So,
I think, yeah,
In my head, that's how it kind of sits, so that you can just sort of offer them, well, this is the pot that we put away for that, and it's only that, not looking at the whole amount. Whereas if it's in together, surely there's a danger that they'll say you've got enough. Does that make sense? Or
I think, I mean, when we're applying for external grants, generally speaking, we don't, there isn't a kind of view of, well, what have you got in reserve before we give you the grant? You either qualify for the grant based upon the criteria, or you don't. So, so there hasn't really been any kind of oversight of what we have in reserve. I think the key point, and it's a kind of reiteration really, is that where you have a reserve, it has to be for a specific purpose. Now, how specific that purpose is for us to agree. There are some very specific ones, like insurance, which can only be used for insurance, and other ones which are capital, which clearly we have quite a big capital programme and a number of schemes, and that is a much broader, wider reserve. But as long as it's specified to what its use is, it can be used for that. And sometimes we'll want to keep it broader for flexibility, and other times we'll know exactly what we want to use it for, and we'll specify it right down to that use.
okay, thank you.
So, congratulations, Mr. Sutton. You've got the board into talking. Ordinarily, when we do the finance report, it's about 30 seconds. But you're not finished yet.
Good.
So my concern, if you will, is it's fairly certain, I would have thought, that we're going to have this one appeal to deal with, and I don't, we'll go through this perhaps in the training, but I would feel more comfortable if we had something in here for appeals, because they are expensive, and I'd rather not have to go to executive board with a supplementary budget every now and again. Secondly, in fees on income, I think I understand now that we're forecasting an increase in income of about £32,000.
Yep.
My expectation over the course of this year and next year is sadly North Yorkshire will face something of a feeding frenzy because of the change to the Greenbelt and other challenges. And I would very much expect there to be an abnormal amount of income over the next 12, 24 months compared to the past. Look, I absolutely get that we're being prudent, which is reasonable, but I would honestly expect more expense in respect of appeals and more income in respect of applications. I'd just like you to talk us through the capital element, because what I'm reading is we've got the new computer system, 52,000, which we're spending. And so really, Appendix C is to approve a budget of 0, I think. But where are we up to? Maybe Mr. Carlton, you want to update us, or Mr. Fenwick. Have we bought it yet? Are we done? Or is there more to go on with that?
No, we're implementing it at the moment. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll be changing over to the new system. That's what's planned. So we bought it. I don't know whether all of the fees will have gone out, but certainly all the fees are earmarked.
I think we're expecting periodic updates and it seems to have gone quiet. We haven't had one for some time.
Apologies. It is imminent. Certainly in terms of communication, we're trying to provide some additional communication to parish councils on the new system, because they'll have to review that in training sessions, and information to yourselves as councillors on the new system.
But in brief terms, it's in progress. We expect to spend
Imminent.
Don't expect any more cash, but there is, I think, I don't want to stray into the confidential, but we were perhaps expecting the opportunity of some cash back.
There'll hopefully be resource savings, just in terms of writing reports. The system itself will make improvements, whereas the old system isn't as easy to do that.
Okay, let's leave that then. I'll come back to that in part 2.
Yeah.
But we're basically recommendation C is to agree 0. Is that right?
4, yeah.
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 Okay, and
Chair, could I, don't ever let's take us backwards, but Councillor just told me that we have 200,000 in the budget for appeals.
well, that's good news. My instinct is we can spend about $250,000 ago, so
Okay, 200,000 a year, so
yeah, so that's less than that.
yeah.
And my final question really is on Appendix B. My recollection is historically we made money on fees and charges. That was gradually over time going down. I'm struggling to see on the revised statements. Is that still profitable? Are we making cash on land charges and other issues, or are we breaking even? And fundamentally, are these statutorily set fees, or can we vary them?
Want me to answer that? In terms of Appendix B and the land charges, we set those charges rather than being nationally set. We reviewed them back in 2024 when we reviewed the system, and it's neutral in terms of cost. Again, I think with the new system and land registry putting into place a new local land charge system, we will review it more robustly next year when we can see the outputs from the new system, whether that's helped make improvements, and then we can review the costings and the charges for those land charges. But certainly over the last couple of years, it's been a similar caseload. The staffing has been the same. So the increases that you see there from 2025 to 26 relate to are really just standard increases.
I'm okay with standard increase as long as we are either breaking even or making money. Mr. Fenwick, you're in yellow. You want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, just bear in mind as well, the government have proposed and they've legislated for local authorities to set their own fees. That hasn't come into operation yet. It was expected that will all happen by March, April this year. But it requires, I believe, a secondary piece of legislation which hasn't come into place yet. And the idea of that was that certainly for development management and some enforcement cost and maybe some policy, that we would be fully able to recover our fees. So that's not come into place yet. It's still proposed, I believe, but it's more likely to happen for next year rather than this year. So that's something I think, Chairman, just to bear in mind going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Waffle.
Sorry, me again. The 200,000 that you've got, that you said that we've got towards any potential appeals, where would that sit?
Supplies and services line. So it was built up originally and then it's been carried forward, revised and original in there.
Okay, so obviously we've got a summary. I'm guessing that there's a breakdown
Yes.
somewhere. Is that something that we could have sight of, or?
Yeah.
I'm just nervous if we're agreeing to a nought. And, you know, there's other things that I don't doubt that they're there, but I just feel that it's our names that are and stamp on to say it's all right. And I think we've got to understand where it is and what we're saying. Is that all right, Chair? Sorry, thank you.
Okay, so any other questions, members? So what I think is asked of us tonight is to approve the revised revenue budgets, which are in the paper, to agree the budget proposal, which I think is an increase on the net cost to the authority of about 10,000 quid to 919,000. To approve the capital budget proposal, which is 0. And to approve the fees and charges, which we've just heard are broadly washing their face. And we're all happy with that. And if so, does somebody wish to propose it? Councillor John. Seconder. Councillor Gilmore. Thank you all very much. Councillor Doe. Sorry.
Councillor Fitzwill, sorry, Chair, we will be abstaining on the budget.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so all those.
Sorry, can I just propose that we do get sight of that and then before we put that to the vote?
No, I think
No, I don't mean to see it before the vote, just
yeah.
that it's a
And what I think
request.
is, well, I'm just getting excited with it. I think that the training that we talked about, so
Yeah,
we can go through it and we can have it as part of that training if that's
Yeah,
okay.
definitely.
So I think the piece of paper is one thing, but it's
Yeah,
adding up. So you've got to.
I understand. I mean, I
Treat it
take
that
their
way.
word that I've asked them and they've said it in the chamber, so I'm happy with that part. I just would like just to go through it.
So we'll add that on as
Thank you.
item E. All those in favour? Any against? And abstentions? Thank you very much. That's okay. You are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
I wouldn't want to tread on Andrew's toes.
You don't want to be compulsive in finance.
Absolutely. Understand where we're spending the money. So we can go back to the beginning of the agenda almost, and the planning applications. The first one is number 5 for land to the rear of 46 Chestnut Grove, Colton. Mr. Collinson, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Move the recommendation, Chair.
Second it.
Anything else, members? In which case, all those in favour? Any against? That's unanimous. Application number 19 for Atherstone Leisure Complex, Long Street, Atherstone. Anything to add, Mr. Collison?
No, other than this is works to trees in the conservation area. And the recommendation is attached on the agenda.
I think what we're saying is that any trees that are removed will be replaced on a 2-for-1 basis.
Yes, in terms of an update on that, because certainly Leisure Services have been trying to establish where they can be replanted, and replanting them in the as close proximity as possible is what they've been trying to do. And certainly they've earmarked replacement of trees. I think there are 11 trees that are going to be removed in total. So a like for like of 1 to 2, they'll replant 22 trees on the land that's opposite the cemetery, Sheepy Road, Priory, is it Priory Road?
Priory Road, yeah.
Yeah, on the parcel of land there, which is
I was
in.
rather hoping that put something on the site so you couldn't see the new building.
There is obviously landscaping that will be part of the assessment with the application, so there may well be opportunities within that to provide them. I think this is really for the removal of the trees that they're looking to remove here. So we'll see. I don't want to prejudge anything.
I generally appreciate you can't do stuff with the trees there, and they sadly need to come up. But
Yeah.
I would like to see trees on the site, if that can be achieved, as well as planting them elsewhere on the site of the property.
Yeah.
Members, any questions or comments?
Do the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Seconder, thank you. Councillor Waffles, all those in favour? And that's unanimous. Again, other than leisure complex, same issue. I'm during the same comments.
It is, however, it's clear that there are only 2 trees here that within the conservation area. 2 trees, T26 and 27, are outside of the conservation area and can be removed without consent, but will have replacements provided. But yeah, recommendation is that there's no objection here and that they're not worthy of a preservation order.
Members, any comments, proposals?
Do the recommendation.
Thank you
We've
very much.
got
Just a question, Chair.
Yeah.
As they're looking for 22 trees down on that parcel of land, that's one that's regularly cut by Streetscape. Have they been consulted that they can adequately maintain that?
As far as I'm aware, but I can check that. They certainly sit next to each other and
They
will be
run a
speaking
tractor
to
up
each
there.
other. Yeah,
It's cut with a tractor at the minute, so
yeah.
22 extra trees is going to
Mhm.
significantly change that.
As long as they're
Not that I'm against it, but I think it's something that just needs to be
Yes.
made aware.
Okay, thank you, and we'll follow up on that and check. So it's been proposed, I think seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Finally, application number 2, Limes Coppice, Anstey Common. Anything to add, Mr. Collins?
It's not going to be me presenting it if it's okay. Jacob was going to present this item, and it may be slightly longer than my first 3.
That's Mr. Hallward.
Good evening, Chair. Nothing major to add here, just to highlight, it's a very large oak tree, Anstey Common, that overhangs a neighbouring bungalow at 183. These works are considered general maintenance to the tree and will significantly improve the amenity of the neighbouring property.
Thank you.
With the recommendation.
Who'd like to grill Mr. Ball?
I'll ask a question. If it's such a large tree, presumably quite large pieces of wood will be coming off it. What is going to happen to those? It is a serious question because in other locations where this sort of work has been done, not necessarily in Warwickshire, the wood has been passed on to organisations that can use it rather than just being shredded or made into firewood.
I think that's one for you to go away and find out.
Yeah.
I thought Councillor Dervick had a wood burner then when he spoke.
Well, I do. That isn't the reason that I'm asking. It's just that if it is a very large oak tree, they've been around a long time, and mature trees like this, particularly if they're severely trimmed or come down, have been donated to various charities to.
I think it's a fair point, but you use to the best purposes that can be used.
I think that would be the recommendation, that wood is used to the best way that it can be.
I think that's unreasonable. Well, happy with that.
Are you aware of any charities?
Not off the top of my
No.
head.
Okay.
I know Councillor Hayfield's running out of wood.
This is Whitley.
So we're all happy with the proposal? All those in favour? And any against? Thank you very much. We're now on to agenda item number 6 for houses in multiple occupation. Anything to add to your report, Mr.
I think
Penick? I think Mr. Penick, you're.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Chairman. No, this is just seeking confirmation of the order.
Can we turn him up?
we just need to turn you up a bit.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
We know it's unlike you to be shy and retiring, Mr. Penick.
Sorry. Is that better, Chairman?
It's on 99. That's as far as it goes, Nick. I don't know whether you can go a little bit closer to the mic or.
Is that better?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Bit better.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, you're going to get a big head now. Sorry. Yes, Chairman. Yes, this is just seeking confirmation of the Article 4 direction for removing permitted development rights or.
Hey, sorry. Would you be able to see whether you can turn your volume up your end?
I've tried it.
You have tried it.
Yeah.
So maybe just lean a bit closer in.
Shout.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Not as easily.
That's a okay.
I suspect this is going to be something that's going to occupy our minds generally across the council, but for now, for our purposes, I'll move the recommendation of printing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Penick, was there anything else you wanted to say?
No, thank you, Chairman. No, thank you.
You're just in, okay.
No,
So it's been proposed, Councillor. Any other questions, members? No? In that case, it's been proposed and seconded. Can I see all those in favour of making the borough-wide Article 4 direction on HMOs? And any against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. We've done agenda item 6, so it now moves for me to propose agenda item number 8, excluding the public and person turning off the telly.
Seconded.
All those in favour? Thank you very much. So agenda item number